G'day guys, welcome back to the channel, and today we are here to preview the AFL 2025 draft. Of course, only a few days away from the draft getting up and away, and a bunch of kids are going to be getting their dreams coming true. Of course, first of all, the draft will be run on November the 19th to November the 20th. Of course, the first round will be done on November the 19th. The rest of the draft will be done on the 20th, and we have a lot to take a look at. So first of all, we will take a look at the top 10 in the AFL draft as it stands, where the official draft order lies. So in round one, of course, pick 1 will go to the West Coast Eagles, along with pick 2, which is Oscar Allen's compensation pick. Picks 3 and 4 are tied to the Richmond Tigers, of course, with Richmond picking up North Melbourne's first round pick in last year's draft. They picked that up as a future first rounder, so they have got pick 3 and 4. Essendon hold pick 5 and 6. Melbourne hold picks 7 and 8, 9 is held by Carlton, and 10th is held by Hawthorn. Now, of course, that's not exactly how the draft is going to go, as most people do see it, as there will be a few academy picks linked to the Gold Coast Suns, which are expected to go in the top 10, along with potentially a couple of father's sons and academies as well with Brisbane. However, first of all, I did want to bring up the fact that there's been some draft news over the weekend. Cal Toomey has revealed that Carlton's picks 9 and 11 could be on the move. Essendon is the front runner to land pick 9, using late picks in the first and early in the second round to try and get that deal done, while North Melbourne is in line to get pick 11 using pick 25 and a future second rounder as key parts of the swap. Now, this hasn't been confirmed at this stage. I think on draft night this will be confirmed as a deal done. But of course, on draft night, many draft picks may be traded. Like I said a little bit earlier, last year we did see North Melbourne trade away a pick to Richmond to get it up in the draft and then pick up one of the Whitlock brothers. And that is why they don't have an official pick in the early parts of the draft, because of trading that away. Now, according to Gettable and AFL.com, they have said that the Eagles' hot favourites to go with their first 2 picks are, of course, Willem Drew, which has been the highly sorted prospect, likely to go at pick 1, and Cooper Duff Titler as well. So he has been the big ruck prospect in this draft pool at this stage, but both of them are expected to go with the first 2 picks with the West Coast Eagles. Now, before we move into a couple of mock drafts from more experts in the AFL community, I did want to take a look at Cal Toomey's Phantom Form Guide, as he is usually pretty spot on when it comes to the drafts coming up. In his November edition with the Phantom Form Guide, he said that the number 1 highest prospect in the country is Willem Dersma, of course. Now, with the second highest ranking, we've got Zeke Hewland, of course, the academy prospect from the Gold Coast Suns. At number 3, he has got Cooper Duff Titler. At number 4, he's got Dylan Patterson, another academy prospect with the Gold Coast Suns. And then at number 5, we've got Dan Annable, which he is linked to the Brisbane Lions Academy. So, like I said, even though I did mention the top 10 draft picks in this year's draft, it's not really going to go out that way. We've already got a couple of academy picks, and father-sons likely going in the top 10 anyway. But now let's take a look at what the AFL community is saying regarding their predictions for the top 10 in the AFL draft this year. So, according to Footy with Alex over on Instagram, his mock draft top 10 reads that he is expecting Willem Dersma to go at pick 1, Zeke Hewland to go at pick 2 as a Gold Coast Academy selection, pick 3, which would be linked to the West Coast Eagles, would be Cooper Duff Titler. Interesting one as well as a ruckman. West Coast have been crying out for a ruck to come into their team. They picked up Matt Flynn, not really being that good, but this guy could be the future of their ruck prospects. Dylan Patterson would be linked to the Gold Coast with pick 4. Daniel Annable at pick 5 would go to the Brisbane Lions as an academy selection. Pick 6, Sullivan Robbie would go to the Richmond Tigers. Harry Dean, the father-son prospect at Carlton, would be going at pick 7. Sam Grill with Richmond's second selection would go at pick 8. Dyson Sharp at pick 9 with Essendon's first selection. Pick 10 would be going with Xavier Taylor as a Essendon selection as well. Now, AFL Utopia, of course, on Instagram as well, has projected his top 15 selections for this year's draft. He has gone with Willem Dersma at pick 1 to the West Coast, Zeke Hewland to the Gold Coast at pick 2, Cooper Duff Titler as pick 3 for second selection for the West Coast. Pick 4 is Dylan Patterson for the Gold Coast. Pick 5 is Daniel Annable for the Brisbane Lions. Pick 6 is Sullivan Robbie for the Tigers. And then pick 7, also linked to Richmond, is Xavier Taylor. Pick 8 is Harry Dean for Carlton as a father-son selection. Pick 9 is Dyson Sharp for Essendon. And pick 10 is Sam Cumming for Essendon. Pick 11, this would be Melbourne's first selection, is Aiden Schubert. And number 12 is Melbourne as well with Sam Brill. Pick 13 for Hawthorn is Jacob Farrow, which was the selection that they did miss out on using for Zach Merritt. So they do have a pretty high draft pick in this year's draft. Pick 14 is Carlton's next selection is Josh Lindsay, and then pick 15 is Jevon Philippo, which is the brother of Matthias Philippo at St Kilda. This one would be going for the Giants. ESPN's mock draft, they have said that Willem Dersma will go at pick 1, Cooper Duff Tytler would go at pick 2, so a little bit different than what a couple of people have predicted. Pick 3, interesting one, they've said that the Gold Coast would get a bid on Dylan Patterson before Zeke Uland, who would go at pick 4. Xavier Taylor would go at pick 5 to Richmond. Sam Grill would be linked to Richmond at pick 6. Harry Dean at pick 7 would be the father-son selection for Carlton. At pick 8, we have Essendon's first selection here with Sullivan Robbie, and pick 9 is Sam Cumming, linked to Essendon as well. Very interesting that ESPN haven't put Dan Annable in the top 9 there as an academy selection for Brisbane though. But looking at Zero Hanger's top 10 mock draft, they have gone with West Coast, of course, Willem Dersma. It seems pretty much certainty at this point that Willem will be the first selection in this year's draft. For the Gold Coast at pick 2, this is the academy, of course, of Zach Uland. At pick 3, this is a bit of a surprising one here from Zero Hanger. They have gone with Sullivan Robbie as West Coast second selection. At pick 4, it says the Gold Coast academy selection of Dylan Patterson will be going there. Pick 5 for Richmond would be going with Taylor, and 6 for Richmond would be going with Sam Grill. 7, it does seem that Dan Annable has slipped down the draft a little bit as the academy selection for them, but still being picked up, Dan Annable. Pick 8 for Carlton looks like the father-son selection of Harry Dean. Pick 9 and pick 10, of course, are linked to Essendon. They have said Sam Cumming and Dyson Sharp. So Dyson Sharp has been linked as a potential top 10 draftee. But someone to miss out in that top 10 there is Cooper Duff Tytler. So it is interesting that Zero Hanger have not put him in the top 10 in their selections. Now looking at a couple of AFL content creators here in True Footy and Dylan Alexander, of course, a very knowledgeable person in the AFL draft, always keeps up to date with a lot of draft news over on YouTube. So make sure to go check them out if you want to look at a lot more of an in-depth reading of the prospects going into this year's draft. But their top 10 selections for their mock draft this year is Willem Dersma, of course, at pick 1 to West Coast, Zeke Uland to the Gold Coast at pick 2, Dyson Sharp to go to West Coast at pick 3. They have said that Richmond will be picking up Cooper Duff Tytler with their 4th selection. Dylan Patterson, of course, linked to the Gold Coast, we got pick 5. Sullivan Robbie to Richmond with pick 6. Sam Cumming would go to the Bombers at pick 7. Dan Annable would slip to 8, but of course would be still linked to Brisbane. Pick 9 with Essendon's second selection, they have gone with Xavier Taylor. And then pick 10 with Melbourne would go with Sam Grill. So that's saying that Harry Dean would slip outside of the top 10 with the father-son selection to the Blues. So we can kind of read how a lot of these guys are looking at this year's draft. They've obviously picked a very similar top 5. You're looking Willem Dersma, Zeke Uland, Cooper Duff Tytler, Dylan Patterson, and then it's kind of a mixture between Dan Annable, of course, linked to the Brisbane Lions as a father-son selection. A couple of people have mentioned Taylor. He's probably the best defensive tall prospect in this year's draft with Harry Dean, but of course with Dean being nominated as Carlton's father-son selection, Taylor is the big prospect for most people who want a defender in this year's draft. But that's where kind of a lot of people are sitting right now, with a very comfortable top 5 settling on that sort of stuff. Maybe someone will slip through with academy selections and stuff. There has been some rumors regarding some teams wanting the Gold Coast to use a lot more of their points with the first couple of picks in their draft by having to pick their academy selection. So maybe West Coast could make those sort of deals to make that sort of stuff happen. So they may be struggling to get some picks later in the draft. But that's really kind of where we're sitting right now. Willem Dersma looks all but certain to be picked at pick 1 to go to the West Coast Eagles. So really exciting for him. Interesting to see if he will get the same sort of treatment that Harley Reid has got over the first couple of years of his career. But he looks like the best prospect in this year's draft. But guys, make sure to go check out a lot of those people that are talking about the draft going into this year. They have a lot of great knowledge regarding the draft. I especially recommend Dylan Alexander, who has kept me up to date with a lot of the draft stuff going into the next couple of days. So make sure to go check them out. If you did enjoy this video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. If you want to keep up to date with all the off-season news and AFL content, then make sure to subscribe. But again, guys, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. We'll catch you all in the next video.